classroom was shaped like a half circle, with seats rising up toward the ceiling like stairs. Students from 6 different alien species sat in those seats, their eyes fixed on the human standing at the center of the room. Some of them had never seen a human before coming to the Galactic Academy. Now they watched Professor Daniel Hayes with a mix of curiosity and something that might have been fear. Daniel was not a tall man. He had brown hair that was turning gray at the sides, and he wore simple clothes that looked out of place among the flowing robes and shimmering garments of his students. But when he spoke, everyone listened. "Today we are going to talk about Earth," he said, touching a panel on his desk. A blue and green planet appeared in the air above him, spinning slowly. "My home." A student named Zira raised one of her thin arms. She was a Volanthe, and her skin was almost see-through. Colors moved across her body like clouds, showing her emotions to anyone who knew how to read them. Right now, the colors were soft blue, meaning she was calm and curious. "Professor Hayes, we have studied Earth in our basic courses. It is a small planet with limited resources. How did your species develop space travel so quickly?" Daniel smiled. It was not a happy smile. "That is exactly what I want to talk about. But first, I need to show you something." He touched the panel again. The image of Earth disappeared, and a new picture took its place. It showed thousands of men in metal armor, holding swords and shields. They stood in tight rows, facing a much larger army. This is called the Battle of Thermopylae. It happened on Earth about 3,000 years ago. The room went quiet. A large student named Torvak leaned forward in his seat. He was a Malvari, nearly 8 feet tall with gray skin that looked like stone. His species had lived in peace for 5,000 years. They had no word for war in their language. "I do not understand," Torvak said slowly. "These beings are fighting each other. They are all humans, yes? Why would members of the same species try to kill each other?" "Because that is what humans do," Daniel replied. "We fight. We have always fought." He changed the picture again. Now they saw men on horses sweeping across an open plain, burning villages as they rode. The Mongol conquests. 800 years ago. Millions died. Another picture. Men in gray uniforms charging across a muddy field while explosions tore the ground around them. World War I. About 250 years ago. 20 million dead. Another picture. Soldiers running onto a beach while fire rained down from the cliffs above. World War II. 60 million dead. The colors on Zira's skin had changed. They were now a pale white, which meant she was afraid. "Professor, how many of these wars did your species fight?" Daniel paused. He looked at each of his students in turn before answering. "We do not have an exact count, but the best estimate is around 15,000 major conflicts." The sound that filled the room was hard to describe. Some students gasped. Others made clicking or humming noises that showed their shock. Torvak simply sat very still, as if he could not process what he had heard. 15,000, Chirrut repeated. He was a Kreth, an insect-like being with large compound eyes and mandibles that clicked when he spoke. "How is that possible? How did your species not destroy itself?" "We came close many times," Daniel admitted, "but we always pulled back at the last moment. And we learned from each conflict." He began walking around the room as he spoke, his hands moving to help explain his words. "Every war taught us something new. We learned how to make better weapons. We learned how to move armies across great distances. We learned how to feed and supply millions of soldiers. We learned how to treat the wounded and save lives that would have been lost. But these are terrible skills," Zira said. "Why would anyone want to learn such things?" "Because the alternative was death." Daniel stopped walking and faced her directly. "Zira, your species achieved peace through isolation. You found a corner of the galaxy where no one bothered you, and you stayed there. The Molvari achieved peace through submission. When stronger species came, they gave them what they wanted. He looked at Torvak. I mean, no offense. These were valid survival strategies. But humans could not use them. Our planet was one world, divided into hundreds of nations. There was nowhere to hide. And submission meant losing everything our ancestors had built. So you fought, Torvak said quietly. So we fought. Again and again and again. And we got very, very good at it. Daniel returned to his desk and brought up a new image. This one showed a sleek warship floating in space, its hull covered with weapons. This is a human battle cruiser. It carries enough firepower to destroy a small moon. We have hundreds of them. Why? Chirrut asked. The galactic community has been at peace for centuries. What enemy requires such weapons? Before Daniel could answer, his personal communicator made a soft sound. He looked at it, and something changed in his face. The students could not read human expressions well, but they could tell that whatever he had read was important. Class is dismissed early today, he said. We will continue this discussion tomorrow. The students gathered their things and began to leave, but Zira stayed behind. She walked down to where Daniel was standing, her colors shifting to a worried yellow. Professor, what is wrong? You seem troubled. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he spoke in a voice so quiet she could barely hear it. The Nexari Dominion has been expanding its territory. Their latest claims are very close to human space. The Nexari are aggressive. But surely they would not attack a species that has joined the galactic community. The Nexari attack whoever they think they can beat. They have never fought humans before. Daniel picked up his bag and walked toward the door. They do not know what we are capable of. And what are you capable of, Professor? Daniel stopped at the door. He did not turn around. Everything I showed you today? The battles, the wars, the millions of dead? That was not just history, Zira. That was practice. He left the room, leaving Zira standing alone with colors of deep purple spreading across her skin. In her species, purple meant only one thing: terror. 6 weeks passed after Professor Daniel Hayes told his students about human military history. In that time, the students returned to their normal lives. They attended classes, studied for exams, and tried to forget the disturbing images they had seen. But deep down, none of them could stop thinking about what Daniel had said. Then the news came. It started as a rumor that spread through the academy like fire. A Nexari battle fleet had appeared in the Korvathi system without warning. The Korvathi were a peaceful species of traders and teachers. They had no warships. They had no soldiers. They had never needed them because the Galactic Council protected neutral territories. But the Nexari did not care about council rules. Zira was in her room when she heard the announcement. She ran to the common area where other students had already gathered around a large holographic display. The images it showed made her skin turn pale white with fear. Nexari warships filled the screen. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds, floating above a beautiful green planet. The Nexari commander had sent a message to the Korvathi government. The message was simple: surrender everything or die. They cannot do this, Torvak said. His voice was shaking, which was strange for a Molvari. His species was known for being calm. The Korvathi are protected by galactic law. The council will stop this. But the council did nothing. As the hours passed, the students watched diplomats give speeches and write letters of protest. No ships were sent. No help was coming. Chirrut made a clicking sound with his mandibles. Why does no one fight? The council has defense fleets. Why do they not use them? Because fighting is hard. The voice came from behind them. Daniel Hayes had entered the room without anyone noticing. He looked tired, as if he had not slept in days. Most species in this galaxy forgot how to fight a long time ago. They talk about peace and treaties, but when real danger comes, they do not know what to do. And humans? Zira asked. What will your people do? Daniel's communicator made a sound. He looked at it and his face changed. I have been called back to Earth. Emergency orders. Professor, please tell us what is happening. Daniel looked at his students. They were young and scared and confused. They had grown up believing that the galaxy was safe. Now they were learning that safety was just an illusion. You asked what humans would do, he said. Keep watching the news. You will find out. He left that night on a transport ship. For 3 weeks, the students heard nothing from him. The situation in the Korvathi system got worse. The Nexari began landing troops on the planet. They rounded up civilians and put them in camps. The council continued to write angry letters. Then everything changed. It happened so fast that at first nobody understood what they were seeing. A human fleet appeared at the edge of the Korvathi system. Not a small diplomatic group. A real battle fleet with heavy warships and fighters, and one massive ship at the center that was larger than anything the students had ever seen. The ship was called the Aegis of Liberty. It was 3 kilometers long and covered with weapons. Its commander was a woman named Admiral Catherine Moore. She sent one message to the Nexari fleet. You have 15 minutes to leave this system. This is not a request. In the Academy Common Room, students from a dozen species watched in shock. The Nexari had almost 200 ships. The humans had fewer than 60. The math was simple. The humans should lose. The Nexari commander thought so too. He laughed at Admiral Moore's message. He told her that human ships would make nice trophies for his collection. 15 minutes passed. The humans did not leave. And then the battle began. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries. The human ships did not fight the way other species fought. They did not line up in neat rows and exchange fire. They moved like a swarm of angry insects, never staying in one place, always attacking from unexpected directions. The Aegis of Liberty launched hundreds of small fighter craft. These tiny ships were piloted by humans who flew directly into the Nexari formation. They did not try to destroy the big ships. Instead, they targeted sensors and engines, blinding the enemy and making them slow. Zero watched as 3 human cruisers got surrounded by Nexari warships. There was no way out. They were trapped. They are going to die, she whispered. But the human ships did something nobody expected. They flew close together until they were almost touching. Then their reactors began to glow brighter and brighter. The Nexari realized what was happening and tried to pull away, but it was too late. The explosion was blinding. When the light cleared, the 3 human cruisers were gone. But so were 17 Nexari ships that had surrounded them. Did they just... Torva could not finish the sentence. They sacrificed their ships to destroy the enemy, Chirrut said quietly. But look, escape pods. The crews got out before the explosion. Other human ships are picking them up. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the Nexari fleet of 200 ships had been reduced to 63 damaged vessels running away as fast as they could. The humans had lost 11 ships. 11. The common room was silent. Nobody knew what to say. Finally, Zira spoke. Her voice was barely above a whisper. They fought like that was normal. Like they had done it 1,000 times. They have done it 1,000 times, Torvik replied. Remember what Professor Hayes told us? 15,000 wars. We thought it was a tragedy. We thought it was barbaric. What do you think now? Chirrut asked. Torvak was quiet for a long moment. When he answered, there was something new in his voice. It might have been respect. It might have been fear. Or it might have been both. I think it was training. All those centuries of fighting each other, all those millions of deaths, it was all preparation. They were getting ready for this. He paused. They were getting ready for someone to threaten people who could not protect themselves. On the screen, the Aegis of Liberty was moving into orbit around the Korvathi planet. Shuttles were launching, carrying soldiers and doctors and supplies. The Korvathi were being freed. Zira watched the rescue operation with colors of deep blue spreading across her skin. Blue meant many things in her species. Right now, it meant something she had never felt before. Hope. But mixed with that hope was a question that would not leave her mind. If this was what humans could do when they were helping others, what would they do if someone threatened their own people? She was not sure she wanted to find out. The news of the Battle of Korvathi spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every species, every world, every station was talking about what had happened. A young species that most galactic powers had ignored had just defeated one of the most aggressive military forces in known space. And they had made it look easy. On the planet called Desara Prime, where the Galactic Council met, Ambassador Linda Chun stood before representatives from 47 species. She was a small woman with gray hair and a calm voice. Nothing about her appearance suggested that she represented a species capable of such violence, but everyone in that room had seen the battle footage. They knew better now. I will speak clearly about what humanity has done and why, Linda said. Her voice was quiet but firm. The Nexari attacked the Korvathi people without warning. They bombed cities. They captured civilians. They planned to make slaves of an entire species. And the Council did nothing. The Nexari ambassador, a scaled creature with 4 arms, stood up to protest. The humans violated galactic law by attacking our fleet without Council permission. They should be punished for this. Linda turned to face him. She was half his size, but somehow she seemed larger. Your ships were bombing innocent people when we arrived. We stopped you. If that is a crime, then I am proud to be guilty. You had no treaty with the Korvathi. You had no legal reason to protect them. No, we did not. Linda's voice grew harder. We protected them because it was the right thing to do. We did not need a treaty to know that watching innocent people die is wrong. The room erupted in noise. Species who had stayed quiet for centuries were now shouting at each other. Some supported humanity. Others feared what this new power might do next. The Nexari ambassador demanded that humans be removed from council membership. Linda waited for the noise to die down. Then she spoke again. I want every species in this room to understand something. Humanity will not stand by while innocent people suffer. We did not ask permission to help the Korvathi, and we will not ask permission next time. If you threaten the helpless, we will come for you. This is not a negotiating position. This is a promise. The meeting ended without agreement. But Linda's message had been received. Back at the Galactic Academy, Professor Daniel Hayes had returned to his teaching duties. His students looked at him differently now. Before, they had seen him as an interesting curiosity, a representative of a strange and violent species. Now they saw him as something else. Something they did not have a word for. After class one day, Torvik approached Daniel with a question that had been bothering him for weeks. Professor, I have been studying the battle at Korvathi. There is something I do not understand. Tell me. The 3 cruisers that destroyed themselves to take out the enemy ships. According to the records, their captains had time to escape before they were surrounded. They chose to stay and be trapped. Why would they do this? Daniel sat down on the edge of his desk. What do you think happened after those ships exploded? There was a cloud of debris. It disrupted the Nexari formation. And then, Torvik thought about it. The human destroyers used the confusion to reposition. They attacked from new angles. They destroyed many more enemy ships. 23 more ships, Daniel confirmed. The crews of those 3 cruisers knew exactly what they were doing. They calculated the cost and the benefit. Their ships were lost, but the battle was won. Their crews survived because they launched escape pods at the last moment. Among my people, this would be called wasteful. Ships take years to build. Ships can be rebuilt. Opportunities cannot. Daniel looked at his student carefully. This is hard for other species to understand. Humans do not think about war the way you do. We do not try to preserve everything. We try to win. If spending a ship wins a battle, we will spend 10 ships. Zira had been listening from her seat nearby. Professor, this way of thinking scares me. Not because it is savage, but because it is so calculated. You treat war like mathematics. We treat it like survival, Daniel corrected. Nobody hates war more than humans. We have 15,000 wars worth of hate. But we learn something from all that fighting. The fastest way to end a war is to fight it well. Half measures cost more lives in the end. Their conversation was interrupted by an alarm. Emergency messages began appearing on every screen in the building. A Nexari diplomatic ship had entered the SAR system. It was broadcasting a message to the entire galaxy that the message was from the Nexari government. They did not accept what had happened at Korvathi. They wanted revenge. They were offering humanity a choice. Join the Nexari Dominion as partners, or face destruction. The message included a list of 14 human colony worlds. It showed their populations, their defenses, and their weaknesses. The meaning was clear. Submit or watch your people burn. In the common room, students gathered to watch the broadcast. Fear filled the air. The Nexari were powerful. Even after losing so many ships, they still had a massive military. Could humans really fight them again? Zira found Daniel standing alone by a window, looking up at the stars. Professor, what will happen now? The Nexari made a mistake, Daniel said quietly. At Korvathi, we were fighting to protect others. We held back because we did not want unnecessary destruction. But now they have threatened our homes, our families, our children. Is that different? Daniel turned to look at her. His face was calm, but something in his eyes made Zira's skin turn pale. At Korvathi, we showed what humans can do when we are being careful. If the Nexari attack our colonies, they will learn what we can do when we stop being careful. And what is that? Everything. Daniel's voice was soft but certain. We will do everything necessary to protect our people. We will burn their shipyards. We will destroy their fleets. We will tear down their government and rebuild it from nothing. We will not stop until they can never threaten anyone again. Zira felt a chill run through her body. That sounds like what the Nexari wanted to do to the Korvathi. No, Daniel shook his head. The Nexari wanted to conquer and enslave. We want to protect and prevent. There is a difference, is there? Daniel was quiet for a long time. When he finally answered, his voice was tired. I hope so. I truly hope so. Because if there is not, then we are no better than them. And that would mean 15,000 wars taught us nothing. He walked away, leaving Zira alone with her thoughts. Outside the window, the stars seemed colder than before. Somewhere out there, 2 great powers were preparing for a conflict that could reshape the galaxy, and everyone caught between them could only wait and hope they survived what was coming. 5 years had passed since the Treaty of Kira 7. The galaxy had changed in ways that nobody could have predicted. The Nexari Dominion still existed, still rebuilding, still angry. But they were no longer the greatest power in known space. That title now belonged to someone else. The Galactic Academy had grown. New buildings had been added, new programs had been created, and at the center of it all was the Department of Strategic Studies. Professor Daniel Hayes was now the head of this department. Students from dozens of species came to learn from him, eager to understand how humans thought about conflict and survival. Zira had graduated and now worked as a diplomat at the human embassy on the Sara Prime. Her colors had changed over the years. The pale whites of fear had been replaced by steady blues of confidence and purpose. She had learned things from the humans that her own people had forgotten long ago. Torvak had returned to his homeworld and started something completely new. The Molvari Defense Institute was the first military research center his species had ever created. For 5,000 years, they had believed that peace came from avoiding conflict. Now they were learning that peace sometimes required the ability to fight. Chirek had become an advisor to the Galactic Council. His job was to analyze threats and recommend responses. Before meeting the humans, he would have suggested diplomatic solutions for every problem. Now he understood that sometimes diplomacy only worked when it was backed by strength. On a space station orbiting Earth's moon, something historic was happening. Representatives from 12 different species had gathered to sign a document that would change the future of the galaxy. They were creating the first mutual defense alliance in recorded history. Admiral Catherine Moore stood before the assembled delegates. Her hair had more gray in it now, and there were new lines on her face. But her eyes were as sharp as ever. "Let me make sure I understand what you are asking," she said. "You want to create a military coalition with humanity at its center. You want us to train your forces, share our tactics, and lead your ships in future conflicts." The Kolvathi representative spoke first. He was a small being with gentle eyes, but his voice was firm. "You saved my people when nobody else would help. You asked for nothing in return. Since then, we have studied human history. We have come to understand something that the rest of the galaxy ignored for too long. And what is that? That peace requires strength. That safety requires preparation. That hoping things will be fine is not a plan. Your species has known this for thousands of years. We are only now beginning to learn." Catherine looked at the other delegates. She saw Molvari and Volanti and Kreth, and species she had never met before. All of them had come to the same conclusion. All of them wanted what humanity had spent 15,000 wars developing. "If we agree to this, there will be consequences," Catherine warned. "The Nexari will see this as a threat. They may attack before you are ready to defend yourselves." "Then let them," the Molvari representative replied. His voice was different from what Catherine had expected. There was strength in it that his species had not shown for millennia. Better to face danger prepared than to face it helpless. The treaty was signed 3 months later. It was called the Compact of Mutual Security. Every member promised to defend the others against attack. More importantly, the Compact created joint training programs, shared intelligence networks, and combined command structures. For the first time in galactic history, different species were learning to fight together. At the signing ceremony, Daniel Hayes found himself standing next to his former students. Zira's colors were cycling through proud golds and determined silvers. Torvak stood tall and confident in a way that would have been impossible for his species just 5 years ago. Chirek's compound eyes were taking in everything, analyzing every detail. "Professor," Zira said quietly, "when you first taught us about human military history, I thought you were describing a tragedy, a species cursed to fight forever. I thought your history was something to be pitied. And now?" Daniel asked. "Now I understand that you were describing preparation. Every war you fought, every mistake you made, every lesson you learned, it was all leading to this. You were getting ready for something, even if you did not know what it was." Daniel nodded slowly. "We always believed that peace had to be defended, that the only way to prevent wars was to be so prepared for them that nobody wanted to start one. It is not a perfect philosophy, but it kept us alive. And now you are sharing it with us, Torvik added, teaching us to think like you think, to prepare like you prepare. We are sharing what 15,000 wars taught us, not because we want others to fight, but because we want them to be ready if they have to. The galaxy was still dangerous. The Nexari were still rebuilding, still plotting, still waiting for their chance. Other powers watched the new coalition with fear and suspicion. Old enemies formed new alliances. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in recorded history, species from different worlds and different evolutionary paths had come together, not because they had been conquered, but because they chose to stand together. They had looked at the universe and decided that hope was not enough. Safety was not enough. They needed to be strong. As the ceremony ended, Admiral Catherine Moore approached Daniel. They stood together at a window that looked out at the stars. "You know this is just the beginning," Catherine said. "Training 12 species to think and fight like us is going to change everything. Change can be good. Change is inevitable. Whether it is good depends on what we do with it." She paused for a moment. "Do you ever wonder what our ancestors would think about this? All those generations who fought and died in wars on Earth, never knowing their descendants would be teaching aliens how to defend themselves?" Daniel considered the question. "I think they would understand. They did not fight because they loved violence. They fought because they loved what they were protecting. Families, homes, children, a future. That has not changed, even if the scale is different." "No," Catherine agreed. "I suppose it has not." They stood in silence, two humans carrying the weight of 15,000 wars and the responsibility of preventing 15,000 more. Outside the window, the stars burned cold and bright against the endless darkness. Somewhere out there, enemies were planning and building and waiting. The Nexari would try again eventually. Other threats would emerge. The universe would never be completely safe, but humanity had learned something in all those centuries of conflict. Peace was not the absence of war. It was the readiness to meet war when it came. Strength was not about wanting to fight. It was about making sure that anyone who started a fight would lose. History was not just the past. It was a teacher, a warning, and a promise. And humanity intended to keep that promise for as long as the stars burned in the sky. Professor Daniel Hayes looked at the coalition flags flying side by side with the banner of Earth. Species that had never known war were learning to stand and fight. Species that had always submitted were learning to resist. Species that had hidden were learning to protect. It was not a perfect galaxy. It would never be a perfect galaxy, but it was stronger than it had been yesterday. And tomorrow, it would be stronger still. That was what 15,000 wars had taught humanity. That was the legacy they were passing on to the galaxy. Not how to fight. How to survive. And in the end, that made all the difference. The space station called Outpost Kira 7 floated in the darkness between claimed territories. It was old and battered, a place where deals were made far from watching eyes. Both sides had agreed to meet here. No weapons, no warships, just words. Ambassador Linda Chan arrived with 3 assistants and no military escort. When the Nexari saw this, they thought she was afraid. They thought humanity was ready to surrender. They were wrong. The Nexari delegation was led by General Korvax, one of their most respected military leaders. He had 4 arms and scales that changed color with his mood. Right now, they were dark red, showing his confidence. He had come to this meeting expecting to crush the humans with impossible demands. "You know why we are here," Korvax said as he sat down across from Linda. "Your attack on our fleet was an insult that cannot be forgiven. But the Dominion is merciful. We will give you one chance to make things right." "I am listening," Linda said calmly. Korvax smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Humanity will provide soldiers for our expansion campaigns. Your technology will be shared with us freely. Your colony worlds will accept Nexari governors. In exchange, we will not destroy your home planet. Linda did not react. She simply listened as Korvax listed demand after demand. Human ships would join the Nexari fleet. Human scientists would work in Nexari laboratories. Human children would learn to speak the Nexari language and worship Nexari gods. When he finished, Linda said one word: no. Korvax blinked all four of his eyes. No. Do you understand what I am offering? I am offering your species survival. You are offering slavery with extra steps. Linda leaned forward slightly. Now let me explain why I'm going to reject everything you have said. She touched a panel on the table. A holographic display appeared in the air between them, showing maps and numbers and images that made Korvax's scales turn pale. Your fleet at Korvati was the largest force you have committed to a single battle in 50 years. The ships you lost represented nearly 20% of your total military strength. You have been pretending to be more powerful than you really are. That is a lie, Korvax growled. Your homeworld is defended by 43 capital ships. Before Korvati, you had 60. Your shipyards are operating at 70% capacity because of labor shortages. 3 of the species you conquered are planning rebellions, and you have been spending resources to crush them instead of building new ships. Korvax's scales had gone completely white. How do you know these things? Because humans have spent thousands of years learning how to gather information about our enemies. We have agents in your territory. We have intercepted your communications. We know more about your weaknesses than your own generals do. Linda stood up and walked around the table until she was standing right in front of Korvax. She was much smaller than him, but somehow she seemed to fill the entire room. Here is what is going to happen. You will remove all your forces from Korvati space permanently. You will release every person you have taken as a prisoner or slave. You will sign a treaty promising to never attack neutral species again. And if we refuse, then we go to war. Not a small conflict like Korvati. A real war with everything we have. Linda's voice was steady and cold. We will blockade your supply routes so no food or fuel reaches your worlds. We will give weapons to the species you have conquered and help them fight back. We will destroy every military base you own until you cannot threaten anyone ever again. You would sacrifice your own people to defeat us. If we have to, though I expect most of the dying would be on your side. The negotiation continued for 3 more hours, but the result was never really in doubt. The Nexari had built their power on fear and threats. They had never met an enemy who knew their secrets. They had never faced a species that could not be scared into submission. When the treaty was finally signed, Korvax looked at Linda with something new in his eyes. It might have been hatred. It might have been respect. Or it might have been fear. This is not over, he said quietly. We will rebuild. We will grow stronger. And when we are ready, we will come for you again. Linda nodded. We know. That is why we will be ready when you do. She left the station that night and immediately contacted Admiral Catherine Moore. They signed everything, Linda reported. The treaty will be official within the week. Do you believe they will honor it? For now. They are too weak to do anything else. But they will try again eventually. In 10 years, maybe 20. Catherine's face on the screen showed no emotion. Then we have 10 or 20 years to prepare. I have already started expanding our fleet. New training programs are producing good officers. If the Nexari want another fight, they will find us even more ready than we were at Korvati. At the Galactic Academy, Professor Daniel Hayes called his students together when he heard the news. They gathered in the same classroom where he had first shown them images of human wars. The immediate crisis is over, he told them. The Nexari have agreed to peace. But I want you to understand something important. He looked at each of them in turn. Zira with her shifting colors, Torvik with his massive stone-like body, Chirik with his clicking mandibles. They had changed in the months since his first lecture. They were no longer innocent. None of this was guaranteed, Daniel continued. We did not win because humans are naturally better fighters. We won because we learned from our mistakes. Every one of those 15,000 wars taught us something. How to organize, how to supply armies, how to predict what enemies will do, how to find their weaknesses. And you think the Nexari will try again? Zira asked. Almost certainly. Peace is never permanent. It is just an interval between conflicts. The question is what you do with that time. Do you grow comfortable and forget how to defend yourself? Or do you stay ready? And humanity chooses to stay ready, Torvik said slowly. Always. We have survived this long by never forgetting that danger can come at any moment. We build ships even when there is no enemy. We train soldiers even when there is no war. We study our potential enemies even when they are calling themselves our friends. Chirik made a thoughtful clicking sound. My people have a saying. Those who study the past are condemned to repeat it. Daniel smiled slightly. Humans have a different version. Those who study the past learn how to survive what is coming. The class ended, but Daniel's words stayed with his students long after they left the room. The galaxy had changed. The rules that everyone thought they understood had been rewritten. A species that most powers had dismissed as unimportant had shown itself to be. Perhaps the most dangerous force in known space. And the most frightening. Part was not what humans had done. It was the knowledge that they had held back. That the battle at Kovati and the negotiations at Kira 7 had only shown a fraction of what humanity was capable of. That somewhere in their 15,000 wars, they had learned things that other species could not even imagine. Zira returned to her room that night and looked out at the stars for a long time. She thought about her own people and their long history of avoiding conflict. She thought about the Movari and their tradition of peaceful submission. She thought about all the species in the galaxy who had chosen safety over strength, and she wondered if any of them would survive what was coming, because if there was one thing she had learned from Professor Hayes, it was this: peace was not something you hoped for. It was something you had to fight for, and humanity had been fighting for it longer than any other species in the galaxy. The question was whether the rest of them could learn to fight too.